Today it's all about cinematic VR music video, so let's get to it. You are listening to the How to Create VR podcast, weekly conversations with VR professional creators, designers, and producers. Hello and welcome to another episode of the How to Create VR podcast, where I speak with all kinds of professional creators, designers, developers, and producers who work on VR, AR, and MR projects. I'm your host, Marcelo Lewin. Today, my guest is Rob McCarty, virtual reality director, emerging media strategist, and cinematic VR music video director and producer. Our main topic of discussion today is how to create music videos in glorious 360 degrees for a true cinematic VR experience. Rob, how do you like that intro? Welcome.
It's pretty good. Definitely appreciate all of the buckets that you're covering.
There you go. Well, you got plenty of buckets to fill there. So why don't we start with your background? I met you actually at a meetup, and the meetup was at your place, right? It's not a virtual arcade. Tell us about your background, then tell us what your VR place is about.
Sure, the VR Showroom. So yeah, my background is, so I started off, I had a social media agency working with social media influencers. We're doing some branded content, working with 360 film, and just that kind of really started my interest in technology. Was able to go out to CES one year when Nokia was releasing the Ozo, and from there it just kind of escalated. But I had some friends out in Brooklyn where I was shooting some of their music video or some of their concerts with the 360 cameras, and started to get it a little bit more immersive and wanted to take it to a level where we could get more into the artist's world versus just like standard show footage. So it started to work out where I wanted to kind of tell their stories of where they're from, what they're about, what their brand's about, and then it started to progress into the more abstract.
Interesting. So how did you get into VR?
So I got into virtual reality specifically when we talk about VR in the interactive side of it with Unity development on this most recent music video project, working with the team over here at the Gateway. So I ended up working with them on this project for this artist named Brills. It's a story about Twonk, which is a music label for EDM, trap, hip hop kind of overtones. I was tasked with kind of creating. They have a very unique story, and it's a very abstract narrative. So virtual reality was the logical choice for capturing their story and their music all into one experience. So I would say that's as far as getting involved in true virtual reality, this project really kicked it off.
And actually, I'm glad you said true virtual reality, because we're going to talk about the difference between VR and 360 video in just a minute. But I like to ask everybody that is creating content for VR, what was your favorite VR experience as of today and why?
Yeah, I would say that my favorite virtual reality experience as of today, the nice thing about being, kind of running this virtual reality showroom is that we get exposed to a lot of different content experiences. It fits a lot of different palettes. There's the super hot VRs. There's the drunken bar fight, even, which is always a fun one at a party setting.
I have not tried that one. Super hot VR, awesome. I love it. But the drunken one, I have to try it.
Yeah, it's always a good one. You get done with that one, and you're sweating. Your heart rate's up. It's definitely helps when we have long nights at the office. Just jumping into VR and getting the heart rate going. But anyways, I'd say my favorite VR experience up to this point is actually Fantasynth. It's an Oculus music video. It's actually a visualizer where the audience is kind of just taken through a ride. Everything's just kind of presented to the audience. There's really actually no interaction. It's just a pretty linear, forward progressing music visualizer, but it's done just with such tact and skill that it really creates it's a very satisfying feeling between seeing something and hearing something and having that unity exist between them.
And this is true virtual reality. In other words, it's not a video, but it's a VR experience.
Yeah, so this was built with game engines in mind. So I believe they built this in Unreal. There isn't any interaction per se, but as far as the graphics and just the level of touch to it, I would say it's really just I would say it's the proper transition between both worlds.
Interesting. We'll have to check it out. What was the name again?
Fantasynth.
How do you spell that?
I'm not very good at spelling for the podcast, but
We'll look it up. It's Fantasyn, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I say FANTASYNTH.
Something like that. But we won't hold you to it.
Okay, cool.
All right, but it's kind of like a music experience.
Yeah, it's great. It really gets your mind going as to where music videos can go in the future.
Right. Very cool. That's interesting. Yeah, we'll definitely have to check it out. So let's jump right in. Let's talk about VR and 360 video. And for those that are kind of new to both, what's the difference between them?
Yeah, so I would label virtual reality anything where you're really taking the narrative into a graphical dimension. So that would be less capturing real time what's going on with like a 360 camera, and more taking virtual worlds and creating graphical interfaces to be experienced. So, the real difference between the two comes in the form of how it's being created. So I'd say VR, again, you use game engines to create VR more so than 360 video, where 360 video is a bit more static, where you don't have 6 degrees of freedom with 360 video. There's a lot of gray areas in between, which, as I mentioned, with like Fantasynth and some amazing music videos being created by Vinyl Williams, among other artists, where they're kind of finding that bridge between both worlds. But I'd say 360 video stays within shooting with a regular camera, 360 camera, and VR kind of more migrates with creating with game engines in mind.
And plus, there's usually no interactivity, right? Now, you were mentioning that there's kind of an in-between. And so are you toying with the idea of shooting 360 video so you don't have to recreate the world on, let's say, Unity or Unreal, which is a lot of work, right? You need some really talented graphic people to do a lot of the stuff, a lot of 3D, and using 360 video to shoot, do your traditional compositing and all that in normal applications, but then bring it into Unity and add interactivity. Have you played with any of that kind of intersection between the real video and the virtual world interactivity?
Totally. So that's kind of what this current project is really about right now for us, is that we blur between both of those forms of capturing reality. And so we're kind of blending it into one video. There's less interaction, but there's mobility within. So it's really, I would imagine that the viewer is going to really feel a lot of different things. That's going to transcend both the 360 world and the virtual world. So, it's hard to isolate both as either 360 or VR. But up to this point, there has been a gap between interactions, kind of the difference. But I think more and more as 360 video gets better and virtual reality gets better, that both those worlds are going to have that overlapping point.
Well, especially as you get live field cinematography involved.
I'm going to say that. Exactly. But that's exactly right. So as soon as the tech gets even more advanced, both of these worlds are going to come together.
Now, by the time, it's going to be a little while before we get into live field cinematography, just because it's expensive. You need a gazillion gigabytes for like half a second of film right now of recording, right? But what about the in-between, meaning shooting with like a 3D camera, a 3D 360 camera, right? To give a little bit of that depth of field. You're still not allowing that 6 degrees of freedom, but you are giving a little more depth of field. What's your thought on that?
I think it's great. I think it's an all fronts battle. I mean, virtual reality is so new and so groundbreaking that people just need to be able to experience good experiences wherever they come from. So what we're looking at is we're looking at creating for YouTube experiences, for Vimeo, for platforms that have massive distribution, and really just giving a teaser of what's to come. Music videos have, they're one part art, one part science. The art comes from the creativity and the collaboration with the artists, but the science comes down to the publicity and the press and the eyeballs that you can get for the artist. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to operate within the current framework for music videos, which is YouTube distribution, but doing so with the artist in this VR 360 video framework.
And are you shooting 3D or just flat 360?
Yeah, shooting with stereoscopic and monoscopic.
Oh, you're doing both. I see.
Yeah, depending on the project. And some artists we worked with, we've actually given them cameras, shown them how to use the cameras, and monoscopic works really well for that. And then they can kind of take them, and then we can take that footage and begin to tell stories. And that way, one of the stories, we did that for an artist, and he went to Alaska and got some of the shots from Alaska for the video. Oh, cool. Making it easier for us to, not have to fly around the world.
Yeah, right.
Pose, but, for right now, doing things that make sense for the project.
Right. What camera do you recommend or do you prefer to shoot with in 360?
Insta360 Pro is probably the go-to. If you're coming on the scene and you're looking to have professional touch, but you're not looking to fork over too much money, I'd say that the Insta360 Pro is kind of that sweet spot. It's a prosumer product, so and even I got my start. I was using the Ricoh Theta in the beginning, and then I started using the Samsung camera, and then I was using the GoPro 7 cam rig, and then I went to the Insta360 Pro.
That's 8K, right?
Yep.
Very cool. Now, to not confuse people, when people hear 8K, they go, wow, what do you need to shoot 8K for? But really, it's spherical, right? It's for the entire sphere. So it's not for the viewport, what they call the viewport, which is the portion that you get to see as a viewer.
Yeah, you have to divide it by the field of view. So if it's like 120 degrees, then you wrap 8K around, divide 8K by 3, and that's what you get for your field of view.
Right. And that's why a 4K truly isn't a 4K when you're watching it. What are some of the challenges that you ran into when shooting 360-degree video?
The conventions of standard motion graphics are a little bit different. There's a lot of post-production required, especially with the 7-cam GoPro rig. That was a post-production nightmare when the stage is moving, and there's a lot of different moving parts to it. So for like concert settings, that's a tough camera to be using. But there's a lot of really sophisticated software like Mystica VR, Mystica M-I-S-T-I-K-A, that does a good job of helping someone that's new really intuitively figure it out. But yeah, the challenges really comes down to it really comes down to the camera that you're using, each camera has its benefits, but also has its costs. It's really it's kind of the kind of paintbrush that you want to paint with. Samsung 360's self-serve is really easy. It works well for like big backdrops and really in good scenery. You can still capture it even though the resolution's lower. At least on the new ones. I haven't used the new ones. I was using the old ones, but they were capturing 4K resolution and an equirectangular video format, and it was pretty good. I mean, it got the job done, and you didn't have to spend a lot of money. But it can't live stream, and it doesn't have all the bells and whistles. Doesn't shoot 3D that the Insta360 Pro does. So you kind of pick your poison with that one. But yeah, there's always a lot of solutions that are coming into the market, which is nice. So one of the programs like Skybox Metal, that's helped resolve a lot of the trickiness of taking graphics and taking assets and integrating them into the video in a way that they don't seem warped or not intentionally warped, at least.
Right. But what about production issues like hiding equipment and people and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, it's a longer timeline to getting projects done. Coming into the field, I had set off to try and learn how to integrate my my skills in the Creative Suite, Adobe Creative Suite, and realized that it's just always learning. I realized that I wasn't proficient in Unity, and I needed to really learn that software so that I could see where the industry's going. And then now that the plugins and the asset store of Unity it's just so robust that you can really come into it, learn a lot from some YouTube videos or take some online courses and begin to at least be able to communicate to people that you're working with on posts, like what the vision is for the storyline and kind of guide them through appropriately.
So your output, is it usually for watching like on YouTube where people use the mouse, or is it for the mobile where they can move the phone around, or is your ultimate distribution method the HMD, the true VR?
Yeah, that's where everything's going. Currently, the projects that we have on the roster, we're focusing on YouTube, standard distribution, Facebook, artists, where the artists have already built established channels we want to distribute on. But the direction of the business is, focusing on, and not just the direction of the business, but at least the art form, is that there's no restrictions in virtual reality. And once enough headsets are, in the market, then it makes sense for, maybe not necessarily a top tier artist that, is booking out the Greek theater, but maybe, one of those next level artists can start jumping into the virtual reality game and not have to spend an arm and a leg to be able to create content in it.
Yeah, and there's actual, and I forgot the name of it, it just slipped my mind, but there's actual VR experiences where they're concerts, they're virtual concerts, and you can actually go and play there as a content creator, and then people watch you. So it's pretty cool on Oculus. I'm sure they have it on Steam as well.
Totally. I mean, that's the direction that we want to take. So I have two projects that I'm working on simultaneously. One's a passion project that really got me into virtual reality, and the other's a larger, more progressive project, which is the Gateway VR Showroom. The previous project, the passion project, the Fortress Collective, is working with musicians and telling their stories, and where the storytelling ultimately ends up for musicians is on stage. So, what we're trying to create with the Fortress Collective is to create a harmony between sight and sound, both in a VR headset and in a physical stage-like setting. So, yeah, that project definitely, wants to go in the direction of creating harmony through virtual reality of the senses.
That's very cool. When is that planned to go live?
That's kind of my creative outlet. We're doing these select shows at the Gateway VR Showroom, and we're doing we're actually releasing music video content from artists that are really doing virtual reality right. So it's kind of a private thing as of right now, but the end goal is that we want to have the Fortress be a physical, experiential centerpiece for a festival or any of these experiential or these music experiences that are broadcast to larger audiences. So
obviously for this, you're using a mixture of 360 video, streaming, and also Unity, I would assume, to create the environment and stuff.
Yep.
Yeah. So this is that piece that you're talking about where everything comes together. And by the way, we'll take a little break here and talk about your showroom, the Gateway. I went there. It's pretty cool. You have a bunch of, it's almost like a virtual arcade. I know it's not like a virtual reality arcade, but you have sections where people can try out demos, and you guys are working on location-based virtual reality too. Just give us really quickly a little bit about it, and then we'll continue on. Got a couple more questions on 360 video.
Yeah, so the Gateway VR Showroom is a living showcase in the heart of Santa Monica, a couple blocks from 3rd Street Promenade and a block from the Metro, where the whole intention of it is broadcasting virtual reality to the mainstream. This is through popular culture and through all the communities that exist around Santa Monica. We're actually in the process of curating the showroom with 8 different experiences that range from AR to VR to single player to 3D audio to haptics technology, basically broadcasting a very concentrated palette of the best experiences so that people who both have experience in virtual reality or are interested in the technology can come in a safe location and experience virtual reality. So we're really excited about the direction of this, and we're getting some good feedback from partners that we're working with, and ultimately we want to bring virtual reality to the mainstream.
Yeah, I highly recommend people to check it out. It was really cool when I went there. You guys had a whole bunch of HTC Vives to try out, and I'm assuming, big assumption, but when the new one comes out, the Pro, I'm assuming you guys are probably going to be upgrading to that too. So
yep, we're in a lot of discussions right now.
I'm sure you are. Yeah. So with music videos, there's a lot of, in traditional music videos, right? In editing, there's a lot of cuts, there's a lot of movement, there's jumps, there's just a bunch of stuff going on, which in traditional flat screen TV, it looks really cool. You put that in 360 in your headset, and now the person is vomiting everywhere. How do you prevent that? What are some techniques, and what do you do differently from both a production, like movement of the camera, right? And then also a post-production, like special effects, and to give it energy. What do you do differently in virtual reality?
Right. So my way of kind of navigating around that is I really try and create environments where there isn't a lot of movement. I try and let the world itself tell the story, especially for 360 video, is that if you get too fancy, it doesn't really translate. And so what we do is we really only have two different movements for 360. We just go, front and back. We just move forward or backwards. We don't go left or right or tilt on axis or anything, because if you're sitting down and you're not as versed in virtual reality, you can get sick pretty quickly. And there's already so much you can do with just going forward and backwards for 360 videos that there really doesn't have to be much more motion outside of that. But yeah, we just kind of build along those vectors and just try and pack as much of a punch within that direction as possible.
Yeah, and I'm with you that I think in VR less is more, right?
Exactly. It speaks for itself.
Yeah, definitely. It's all about that experience. When you're editing, are you previewing in a headset? I know with Premiere Pro you can do that. Do you use Premiere Pro to edit 360 video? And if so, are you previewing in an HMD?
Yeah, I am. With Premiere, with After Effects, with Unity, that's a kind of a newer integration into our workflow. But it really makes it easy feedback. We've had experiences where we put on the headset and it just didn't make sense, and we were already pretty far down the road of finishing up the project, and we had to go back and then just have sleepless nights of looking.
Right. Well, I think that's a mistake that many of us make at the beginning, right? We're watching it on YouTube with the mouse where you drag and move it around, and it looks cool, and the movement looks cool, and then you go, okay, well, let's see what it looks like inside the HMD, and then all of a sudden it's completely different experience, right? And not usually a good one. Yeah,
that's actually the crux of the issue, is trying to figure out at what point do you try and make the 360 video audience on YouTube happy, or at what point do you try and make the person that's viewing it in a headset happy? And that's a line that we're always trying to make sure that we bounce.
Or do we need to have two versions?
Yeah, we could do that. It's just it really comes down to the timelines that we're working with, and the amount of resources that we have. Is at the end of the day, you have to communicate and you have to educate whoever you're working with, that usually the artist, about distribution and all of that, with different codecs and different exports, and it gets pretty messy. So you can actually have a very, very, very well done 360 video that works really well on YouTube, and it also works really well on a headset. And that's kind of where we're operating, is that there can be a one size fits all. And there are two actually very different experiences when you have the headset on versus on YouTube. So we kind of play to both.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, very cool. Well, Rob, we're pretty much out of time. I like to ask everybody before they go to describe what VR will be like in the year 2025. I know that's a long time from now, but it'll get here sooner than you think. So what do you think VR will be like? Or on the other side is, what would you like it to be like?
Yeah, in the practical sense, we really want to go into the the abstract world of what it would look like. There's a million different ways we can take it, but practically, I would say I would like to see it as, just used as a tool. On the art side, listening to music has always been an inspiration. Whether I put on, maybe I put on some Motorhead before I go for a run, or I tone it down and I listen to some some reggae dub and just kind of get into my workflow. It's always been a tool for me to kind of acquire different sensibilities and different headspaces. So from the artistic world, from the music world, I really see virtual reality being a tool to accomplish just that, where the audio and the visuals, sensory inputs are blasted with content that creates different connections in the brain and helps unlock different forms of creativity. So I really see it being a very useful tool for the creative industry to be able to tap into things that that they maybe need to get through that writer's block with, and they need to tap into.
Very cool. Yeah, it's going to be very cool when it just becomes just another tool and it's not this weird thing that people don't know what to do with. Well, Rob, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. It was really fun speaking with you.
Yeah, likewise, Marcelo. I really appreciate the time. And your audience is ever in Santa Monica, have them come through the Gateway VR Showroom.
Yeah, for sure. Now, if people want to get a hold of you, or do you want to give a URL to the showroom, whatever you like to do?
Sure. It's gatewayshowroom.com. And we're going to have our grand opening April 8th, which is going to host not only our showroom partners, but a mix of the Hollywood and the tech community at large. It's going to have a live muralist in the back. We're going to have food trucks, a bunch of demos from independent developers, and then capping it with a concert from one of the artists from the Fortress Project. So that's going to be a pretty fun time. So yeah, Sunday, April 8th at the Gateway Showroom. Fill out on the Gateway's homepage for more information about the launch.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah.
I'll definitely be there.
Awesome, Marcelo. Well, we're excited to have you, and thanks again for your time. We really appreciate what you're doing for the industry and bringing insight to the people. So thanks.
Thanks, Rob. Thank you. And thanks to the rest of you. I'm glad you were here with me. For more podcast episodes, courses and tutorials on how to create VR, blog articles, and a lot more, please visit howtocreatevr.com. So until the next episode, I'm your host, Marcelo Lewin. Cheers, everyone.